No, not X-Men. Not X-Men. Nightcrawler is written and directed by Dan Gilroy and stars Jake Gyllenhaal, Rene Russo, Riz Ahmed, and Bill Paxton. And Nightcrawler is the cheerful and uplifting story about Lou Bloom. And who is Lou Bloom? Well, he's a psychopath, pretty much. He's a psychopath who needs work. And Lou stumbles upon the world of nightcrawling. And what a nightcrawler is he's a person who rushes to the scene of an accident or a crime before the authorities get there. And they take footage of it and sell that footage to evening news companies for a big buck. And I was really excited for Nightcrawler. I heard lots of great things about it. My friends who had seen it before me were just, all praises. And it's actually turning out to be an interesting year, I think, for independent movies because 2014 is turning out to be one of those years where the indie movies just kind of overshadow most of the blockbusters. And I watched Nightcrawler, and I think it is an exceptionally well-crafted movie with some really, really dark stuff in there. Like, the movie is just really, really kind of dank. Not really depressing, but it makes you feel dirty. And it's all led by a really ridiculously towering performance by Jake Gyllenhaal. First of all, Nightcrawler looks really, really great. The cinematography really brings out the lights of the city in such a way that it makes the city lights look really kind of eerily beautiful. Like, I've said this before in another review that I really like, what an urban landscape looks like at night. And most of this movie takes place at night, and it's very surprisingly well lit for something that takes place almost in darkness completely. One cool thing though that I noticed is that most of, if not all, the interiors in the movie are really very bare and like feel very artificial. Like Lou's apartment is just extremely empty. There's like a TV and a plant. That's it. And the TV station where Rene Russo's character Nina works at, it feels also kind of empty. And you just have this kind of fake background, which is just a skyline of LA, and it just really looks fake. It kind of implies, for me at least, that the real world is out there on the streets where dirty things happen. Inside these rooms, people just kind of manipulate the events that happen outside to earn money. And one cool thing I liked about, the whole production design of this movie is that Lou's clothes and the equipment he uses, the car he drives, get cooler and cooler and like more expensive like the better he gets at his job. And it's not obvious the way they present this. It's not like they have this, they just show off all the equipment every time he gets a new camera, but you just begin to notice that he's getting new stuff. I also didn't expect the movie to really sound good, but it does sound very good. I mean, out there when they're filming crime scenes and whatnot, the gunshots and like car crashes and whatever, they really help make the violence and the danger feel very real, very raw, very close to the characters. And it's very unsettling because it does feel like you're watching an actual crime scene take place. Overall, the sound really is good, from like the cacophony of voices just speaking through the police scanner to all the different people talking on the news, and even like the tense silences that come on whenever there's like a night crawling scene. James Newton Howard's score for this movie also is fantastic because it has this darkness beneath it, and but on the surface it sounds very triumphant almost in a modern way, but there's just something kind of you're skeptical about the music because this movie is just so dark, and the music that comes on is so kind of victorious almost, that it's really, really dissonant in that sense. This movie never really gives you a chance to relax at all. I mean, if anything, the pacing just gets faster and faster as the things Lou does get more and more out of hand. The editing is cool too in that we're shown like little things that say so much about Lou. Him watering his plant, or it shows a shot of him wearing a certain watch he got from somebody else. And there's that scene everyone's talking about of him, just kind of screaming into a mirror, and all these little things like just kind of give you an insight into how he is like psychologically speaking. Two scenes in particular in this movie that I thought were edited extremely well. Number one, there's a scene where Nina is directing her anchors to report on this gruesome crime, and like it's just amazing to see how she's able to kind of maneuver the floor and really just kind of direct people, telling them what to say at certain times. And I thought it's a really interesting look at news that you don't really get to see that often. And the other scene is pretty much the entire last act, or 30-ish last minutes of the movie, which are extremely tense. It's just Lou and Rick, played by Riz Ahmed, just going after this one lead they have. The cool thing about the story of Nightcrawler is that it's told entirely from Lou's point of view. So you really get this kind of sick combination of disgust that you hate what he's doing because he's going to like all these extents to just get what he wants, but at the same time you kind of feel good and proud for him because he's able to get so much success out of nothing. And this movie really is about desperate people who just want to live like that American dream. And Lou Bloom in himself is really just such a fascinating character because he's just so polite, but he's too polite. He's like a robot. He's like HAL 9000, and you can really tell immediately from the very first scene in this movie that there's something wrong with this guy. All the dialogue also in this movie is just so mercilessly dark. I mean, they talk about people and accidents and whatever like they're just a means to get money and stuff, and it's really brutal, but at the same time it's very realistic. There are people who think like this. In terms of acting, before I talk about Gyllenhaal, of course, Bill Paxton, who plays like one of Lou's rival Nightcrawlers, he's really entertaining as always. Riz Ahmed plays Lou's partner Rick. I kind of wish he had more screen time, more on that later, but you do, feel sorry for him eventually after a while. Renee Russo is great also in this movie because on the surface, she's very authoritative. She seems to be a very strong-willed woman, but deep down you can tell that she's just as desperate as everyone else in this movie. But Jake Gyllenhaal really is like the reason to watch this movie. Every single thing he does is just so spellbinding and hypnotic. Like every single nuance he has, like the twitches he does, every single word comes out of his mouth just feels so measured and precise. Like he's really practiced this at home, like some sort of wannabe used car salesman. But at the same time, there's just this like almost evil craziness hiding underneath it, and it only comes out like once in a while. But it's really scary when it does. The director Dan Gilroy really turns this movie from like a character study into something almost like a nature documentary. I mean that in the best way possible. I mean that as in he really doesn't take any sides with the story, and he just kind of shows us how dirty this business is, in that people are just going for the kill without any remorse whatsoever. This is actually Dan Gilroy's directorial debut, and it does not feel like that at all because he shows some surprising control with like some of the chase scenes, which are easy to mess up, and he really just comes across as like having a real vision for what he wants this movie to be. I do have like a couple like tiny problems about the movie. For one, I really don't buy how it ends, because by the ending they kind of introduce another element into the story that kind of threatens how Lou can go about his work, but they never really say anything else about that element. Like they just kind of leave it, then the movie ends, and I really don't buy it. Like I feel like as realistic as this movie is, that thing that happens near the end should have been pursued more. And the other problem I have is with the character of Rick. I won't blame Riz Ahmed because he does do a good job, but I really feel like we should have cared more about Rick, because we spend more time than I would have expected with him, and he really is kind of like the audience in the movie. Like we see what Lou does through his eyes sometimes, and I don't know, we're really supposed to feel a certain feeling about Rick, like by the ending, and you don't feel for him as much as I think they wanted us to feel for him, something like that. Anyway, yeah. But Nightcrawler really is a great movie. This plus Gone Girl, like it's interesting because both those movies are great, and both those movies really kind of attack how the media sensationalizes all these tragedies and whatever, and it's really interesting to get two great movies to talk about that kind of subject. I think we're getting more aware maybe as a news-watching society, I don't know. And mark my words, and mark everyone else's words who said this about the movie, but Jake Gyllenhaal should get nominated for Best Actor for this movie, because he's absolutely the best thing about this movie. Alright, so that's my review from Nightcrawler. Have you guys seen it? What do you think about it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Whatever you thought, whether you agree or not, please leave me a comment. Let's have a conversation.